fierce shelling in a residential area that's in Kyiv, again, the second largest city. Images from social media showing Ukrainian soldiers fighting on the streets of Kyiv with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. The Ukrainian military saying this video shows their drone strike on Russian forces. But tonight, this satellite image taken just today showing one of several convoys of Russian military vehicles, one convoy alone now stretching 17 miles long, growing by the day, and headed toward Kyiv. Today, there were talks, a delegation from Ukraine arriving at the border with Belarus, meeting with the Russians for 6 hours, agreeing only that they will meet again. While in Ukraine, President Zelensky signing an application for immediate membership in the European Union and asking for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. What the White House is saying about that tonight. And the U.S. and a host of other nations taking more steps to freeze Russian assets, even traditionally neutral Switzerland, no longer neutral. The impact already being felt in Russia tonight. Long lines for cash at banks and ATMs there, the value of the ruble sinking. Vladimir Putin meeting with advisors today, blaming the economic crisis on the West, which he called an empire of lies.
Tonight, Russian shells pummeling a residential neighborhood in Kyiv, the second largest city in Ukraine. Officials there saying dozens of civilians were killed in potentially the worst single attack of this war. Human Rights Watch accusing the Russians of using cluster bombs on the city. If verified, a deliberate attack on civilian areas would be a war crime. Ceasefire talks between Ukraine and Russia on the border with Belarus ended after 6 hours with no deal, but an agreement to try to meet again in the coming days. With a Russian advance slowed by a fierce Ukrainian defense, there are fears Putin will intensify his attacks, already raising tensions with the West even higher by putting Russia's nuclear forces on heightened alert. President Biden answered with one word when asked today if Americans should be worried about nuclear war.
Mr. President, should Americans be worried about nuclear war?
No. The Pentagon says Russia still has significant combat power, but has met stiff resistance from the Ukrainians.
It's clear the Russians have not made the progress that they wanted to make by day 5.
New satellite images today show a miles-long column of Russian armed vehicles and tanks just 17 miles from the center of Kyiv, but Putin's army being met head-on. The Ukrainians releasing this drone video from outside of the capital, claiming to have knocked out part of the Russian column, burned out vehicles littering the roads around Kyiv. And north of the city, these locals reportedly stopping a Russian tank from entering their village. In Kyiv this weekend, Ukrainian forces battled Russian troops in the streets, even forcing them to retreat in a relentless defense of the city. But in the south, Russians appear to be advancing on the strategic Black Sea port of Mariupol. Heartbreaking images emerging there of some of the youngest casualties of this war. Here, a 9-year-old girl lies in the back of an ambulance as a medic races to save her life. It was too late. At least 16 children have already been killed in the fighting, which officials say has claimed over 350 lives in all. After rallying his fighters over the weekend, Ukrainian President Zelensky today praising the heroic defense being put up by his army and the country's citizen soldiers, saying Ukrainians have shown who we are. Russia has shown what it's become. He later signed an application to join the European Union. It's a symbolic move that could take years to pass. Even so, it's a message of defiance to Putin. And around the world, outrage at this brutal invasion is only growing. The UN General Assembly held its first emergency session in decades. Officials warning they're preparing for up to 4 million refugees from Ukraine in coming days and weeks.
Well, we're here in one of the main train stations in Kyiv, and you can see the crush and the desperation of people desperate to get out of a city, fearing that it could come under siege from the Russians at any time.
French President Macron calling Putin today, who reportedly agreed to halt all strikes on civilians. But there's no evidence that's happening from a man who also said he wasn't going to invade in the first place. In Belarus, to Ukraine's north, American diplomats could be seen taking down the flag at the embassy in Minsk today, which is now suspending operations. And in the capital, tensions rising with every passing hour. Volodymyr Tkachuk, a former soldier, picking up his ammunition in defense of his country.
Do you have javelins here? Oh, okay, secret. But they're For you, tactically, javelins are helpful.
Тобто тактично джавелини корисні.
Так.
One word answer, yes. Ian Panel with us from the Ukrainian capital again tonight. Ian, I know President Zelensky, as we reported there, now urging the U.S. and NATO to impose a no-fly zone over significant parts of the country. The White House late today saying that's not going to happen and explaining why.
Yeah, that's right. Their answer is no, because, of course, a no-fly zone would mean deploying US military to enforce it, which, of course, the president's ruled out, and it would run a high risk of a potential direct conflict with Russia, which, of course, David, no one wants.
Ian Panel leading our coverage again this week. Ian, thank you.